Good afternoon and welcome to the Gouge Center's Talkback Thursday. I'm Amy Miller, Director of Programming and Education, and I'm thrilled to have the renowned Scotty Barnhart with the Count Basie Orchestra joining us today. Welcome, Scotty.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me. Thank you.
Absolutely. We're thrilled to have you on.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Yeah, so you are on today because in just a little less than a week, you'll be arriving to Auburn University. Yeah, with your orchestra.
Yes, that's right.
We're so excited to have you. And for all of you joining us today, we are back at it here at the Gouge Center. We have had a few different performances with spectacular artists already in our amphitheater at the City of Auburn Lawn and Porch. And that is where the Count Basie Orchestra will be joining us next week.
Yeah, we can't wait to get there. Can't wait.
Yes, we're thrilled. We're so thrilled. So we have a public performance for all of you to note. Next Thursday, it is Thursday, May 13th at 7:30 p.m. here at the Gouge Center in our outdoor amphitheater. We also have a school performance with the orchestra that morning, next Thursday at 10 a.m. We'll be live streaming from the stage outside. We're thrilled. And there are still tickets available. So anyone tuning in, please go to gougecentertickets.auburn.edu, snag your tickets, and come enjoy one of the most iconic orchestras of our time here in Auburn. Yeah.
Well, I hope to see you there.
Yeah. Absolutely. And I want to note, oh, sorry.
No, yeah, go ahead and get the tickets, please. Get them.
Yes, come on out. Come on out. Right. And this, we were just chatting for all of you to know that the Count Basie Orchestra has been to Auburn University before. They came back in 1974. We found a record in the Auburn Plainsman that your orchestra and the Count was here back in 1974. They performed at the Art Coliseum. So we're excited to have you all return many decades later.
Yeah. Can't wait. Can't wait.
Yay. So I'm going to tell all of you who are joining us today a little bit about this phenomenal educator and artist that's with us. So just bear with me. I'm going to tell them a little about your bio.
Okay.
So Scotty Barnhart is an internationally acclaimed jazz trumpeter, composer, arranger, educator, author, two-time Grammy winner, and director of the Count Basie Orchestra. Prior to being selected director in 2013, he was its featured trumpet soloist for 20 years, and in 2015 was executive producer of A Very Swingin' Basie Christmas, which I believe was your very first Christmas album of the orchestra. Amazing. And it went straight to #1 on the charts. Fantastic. And then back in 2018, you all recorded All About That Basie, an album that was in collaboration with Stevie Wonder. And was nominated for a Grammy Award. Incredible. Scotty is also co-founder and artistic director of the Florida Jazz and Blues Festival, and you are a professor of jazz trumpet at Florida State University, not too far away from Auburn.
Too far.
Yeah. And then I have to note the incredible lineup of artists that you have recorded with and performed with over the years, including Tony Bennett, Diana Krall, Ray Charles, Frank Sinatra, Wynton Marsalis, Herbie Hancock, Quincy Jones, the Duke Ellington Orchestra, still going, y'all, Aretha Franklin, Barbara Streisand, George Benson, and so many others. So, amazing. Thank you for being here.
My pleasure. My
pleasure. Yeah. So let's dig right in. You've been with this orchestra for so many years. Are we at 28?
28 years now, yeah. 28 years. Hopefully for another 28 more.
Hey, you're here.
Yeah, it's been a dream come true. Absolute dream come true.
So what has it that has captured you by, whether it's the Count, the orchestra, playing, and then becoming band director, what has captured you to stay committed for so long?
Well, I mean, I've been a musician pretty much all my life, and growing up in Atlanta, Georgia, I grew up in Ebenezer Baptist Church, and I was always exposed to great music and all of this. And when I heard Basie, it was, to me, my first thought was, oh, that's the same thing I hear in church, once a month or twice a month or whatever. So then I started playing trumpet when I was 9 in 1974, the year Basie was at Auburn. And music has just been a part of my life. My mother was a musician, she's a pianist and organist and vocalist. And I had great teachers. I went to undergraduate at Florida A&M, which was a major thing because my instructor there, Lindsey Sargent, who's now the chairman of the music department there, he really was the one that basically got me to understand that I did have some talent and I just needed to practice. You know what I mean? And just study and do the right things that I needed to do. So I just was always trying to get better as a musician, and it hasn't stopped. I mean, I'm at my piano now, so I'm always working on music, and of course I teach now at Florida State. I've been there 18 years, so my life has just been this one big thing of music. But the Basie Orchestra just magnified everything. I mean, all of those little fundamentals I had worked on and still work on. You know, that's one thing about the orchestra. We magnify or we refine the fundamentals all the time, which is why this orchestra is still going. When you think about it, Basie died 37 years ago, and this orchestra is still going at the top of its game. And one of the main reasons is because the refinement of the fundamentals that a lot of groups or bands just kind of overlook, you know. And so for me, it's just been a great experience. I'm learning all the time, and by the time I joined 28 years ago, I was just wanting to be the best person in the trumpet section, you know, just play my solos and do what I needed to do. But I started doing other things. I became the sound and light guy. I became the union representative. All of these things I started doing, not really understanding that they were preparing me to become director one day. So when I was appointed director in 2013, it was an easy transition. It wasn't like, oh, I got this new job, I got to learn how to do. No, I spent 20 years learning how to get ready to do what I'm doing now. And but the Basie Orchestra has always been my favorite. When I saw the band twice with Mr. Basie when I was in high school, and I just knew one day I would be in the orchestra. I didn't know when or how. I just kind of knew. I had a feeling, you know, I have a feeling about certain things, and so I just continued to just learn and get every record with Basie's name on it, and I would memorize the guys' names in the trumpet section. Who's on this album? Oh, he's not on that one, you know, stuff like that. Memorizing the music, and I still do that. I mean, I'm still always listening. So I guess I'm where I'm supposed to be. You know? What else to say that?
Oh, and we're so fortunate that you are continuing on the legacy of this very special orchestra.
Yeah, it's very important.
What is it about the Count that maybe mystifies you or intrigues you by his work? And, you know, because we all know that we stand on the shoulders of many that have come before us.
Yeah.
Shoulders of whom you're standing on are quite prominent, especially when we're talking about the history of American music, the history of jazz, the history of the swing era. He is iconic, top, right? Highly respected. We all know this, right? And so what does it mean for you as a band leader to be continuing on with his legacy, or maybe creating that to be a bit different for your own?
No, I'm continuing his legacy. His legacy is rich enough to last forever. I don't have to do anything to it except continue it, you know, and make sure we do the right things and play the right music, and most importantly, have the right personnel. That is really the key. Mr. Basie, his orchestra, and even to today, it's always been known as having a very slow turnover rate, meaning when the musicians would get here, they wouldn't leave, they would stay because they loved playing for him, and he treated them as human beings first. That's the first thing. He didn't treat them as a commodity like a bunch of musicians working for me. No, he never did that. He treated them like human beings first. And if you do that, then you're dealing with the humanity of a person, and it's much easier to get whatever musical or artistic thing you want to get. So I understand that. And from everybody that I've talked to that worked with him and knew him intimately, he was the nicest guy in the world, but he was a very smart man. He was a master psychologist. That doesn't get pointed out a lot, but he was a master psychologist. He knew how to deal with people. He knew how to, sometimes you don't say anything, you just let the situation fix itself. So there's a lot of different things that he was able to do. And I've heard so many stories of how he just made everybody feel at ease, but he was also always in charge. And one of the gentlemen in the orchestra that retired a few years ago made the mistake of thinking that one day Mr. Basie wasn't in charge. And Mr. Basie let him know really quick, you know, I'm still in charge here, without having to say a word, you know. So Basie, you can't find anyone that has anything negative to say about him, ever. I've never, ever heard one even inkling of a word that was negative. It's all been positive. And his music, when you listen to it, it makes you feel good. And that's what music is supposed to do. It makes you want to dance. It makes you feel good. It makes you be happier about your day if you hadn't been happy already. So whenever I'm in a mood, just kind of down a little bit or whatever, I'll put a Basie record on. Bam, I'm back up to, you know, my spirits are lifted back up. And so, look, I am keenly aware of where I am and whose shoulders I'm standing on. And my job and my hope is that I just can continue to do the right things that would have made him proud, play the things that he would have played, present his orchestra, because it's still his orchestra. It's not my orchestra. It's never going to be anybody else's but his. when I'm finished. So 100 years from now, who's ever leading it, it'll still be Mr. Basie's orchestra. And that's one of the things that, as long as we understand that, and the musicians in the orchestra do understand that, we'll have no problem. You know, just keep going and just keep trying to do new things. There are a bunch of things that we have coming up that the orchestra, believe it or not, hasn't done before.
Oh, tell us.
I have a meet. Okay, well, I'll tell you.
Tell me.
The most important thing right now, we'll have to back up 3 years ago, before COVID, or a year before COVID, maybe 2 years before COVID, Mr. Basie finally was inducted into the Blues Hall of Fame.
Okay.
You know, so I had to fly to Memphis, Tennessee for the Blues Awards, and they accept the award on his behalf and give a little speech and things like that, and also be a presenter at the Blues Awards. But it was all about Mr. Basie, you know, and everybody greeted me with just the utmost respect. And again, that's Mr. Basie, not me, it's him, you know. And while I was there, I'm around all of these great blues musicians, from Bobby Rush to Muddy Waters' son, to you name all of these people. And it just dawned on me as I'm standing with all of these, you know, musicians around me, our next record should be a blues record. We've never done that. The orchestra has never in its 86-year history done a blues record based on the Delta blues. I mean, the original work, that kind of blues. Robert Johnson and the Son House and the Howling Wolf and the Muddy Waters, Charlie Patton. We've never done that, ever. So it took me the better part of a year just trying to see if I could hear it in my mind. And then something else happened a year ago that I was able to finally hear it in my mind. So I actually have a meeting. I have to fly to San Francisco just in 2 weeks or 3 weeks for this meeting, and it's gonna happen. So this is just kind of a production type of a meeting and all of that kind of thing. And we hope to be able to get into the studio at Capitals. We're gonna do it at Capitol Studios in Los Angeles, hopefully October and November, about the time the year's out, hopefully. But that's never been done before in the history of music that I know of. When you take an orchestra like Basie or even Ellington or any major orchestra and take the authentic blues of Robert Johnson and Howley Wolf and Lead Belly and all these great musicians, find the right music, the right songs, and have it arranged for us. That's never been done before. So it's a very serious thing musically, because the one instrument that has to be right, which is the key, if we don't get that one instrument right, it won't happen, and that's the bass. So the next time you guys listen to some blues, like some real down-home blues, just listen to what the bass is doing. They basically play a repetitive pattern over and over and over and over. They rarely change the notes. That's the complete opposite of what a jazz musician does. Complete opposite. So when I'm in LA, California, a few weeks, the first person I'm meeting with, our bass player, happens to live in LA. So he and I are going to spend a whole day together listening to this music and figuring out what his job needs to be and how he can straddle that fence between the sophistication of a jazz band, jazz orchestra, with the way the bass plays, with the authenticity of how a blues bass player plays. So that's what I've been working on for the last 2 years, and finally that's about to happen. And I think it's gonna be really something, and I'll be able to have whatever guest I want. I'm gonna have Buddy Guy. I talked to George Benson just a couple of days ago. He's gonna be on it. So I'm just trying to get all of the right blues great guitarists that are alive today, as well as female vocalists too, like Lauren Mitchell, Carmen Bradford, our vocalist, she'll be there. And I'm just trying to figure out who the other few vocalists should be. And we'll get together and make a record that I think should have been done a long time ago, but nobody, I guess, really thought about it. And all of this music, you know, and that's just one thing. Got other stuff too. That's just one thing. So.
It's exciting. That's exciting. But they're inextricably connected. Blues
yeah, of course. You can't have one without the other.
Yeah. And he started in Kansas City with the orchestra, right? But he, you know, the orchestra in his era toured all over, right? And we know that there was something notoriously called the Chitlin Circuit, right? Where they were within the East Coast and the Southern and the South and the Delta Mississippi area, connecting with primarily African-American communities. So of course, that Delta blues sound was in the core of what he was doing the whole time.
Yeah, I mean, just
bringing that back. Yeah.
I know. I'm just still trying. I have in my mind just the sound of Son House singing or Robert Johnson singing, and then the richness of the Basie sax section or the horns come in on top of that. Oh my God!
We gotta talk more about that. Oh, exciting! Yeah, so good. So then also you had mentioned about how fun the music is. You
Oh
know,
yeah.
I'm a
You know,
long-time swing dancer. I love the music. It's real. I will, we'll challenge anyone to be able to not at least be tapping their toes while
well, you
listening to jazz music,
know,
especially Count Basie.
look, every concert that we do, whether it's in Europe somewhere in a big, beautiful concert hall, or even Disney Hall in LA, I always tell the audience, if there's room for you, dance. That's what it's
Yeah.
for.
That's what it's.
So,
Well, that's the roots. The roots
yeah,
come from that
exactly right.
conversation, right?
Exactly
So
right.
something I want to highlight for today for folks to know is the time, the era of which he was, leading, becoming the iconic band leader that he is and was. For instance, it was a time where jazz was really uplifting and bringing joy and swing, all of this conversation to a lot of people, right? It was, if we talk back about these stages in that area, the Savoy and the Palladium, these stages that were in Harlem during that time where he played with iconic figures, sang with Billie Holiday, right? It was a space in which it was some of the first desegregated stages in our country of that time, right? And it was a place where young dancers were coming and performing and catching their next vibe along and their next turn or their next move in relationship to those musicians, such as the Count, creating the music, correct?
Absolutely right.
Can you speak to that a little more and what that meant for desegregation, for bringing different people together on dance floors?
Well, that's really what the function of art is anyway. It's just to expose the humanity that we all share. And that's what Mr. Basie was able to do through what we call swing. So even today, when we go play concerts, our audience is always mixed for the most part. And when we do dances, it's just a joy to watch the people dance while we play, And Mr. Basie had a knack for, one of the things the orchestra is known for is playing things at the perfect tempo. He developed that from watching dancers. He didn't develop that from watching the guys in the band. He developed that from looking at the feet of the dancers and watching what they were doing. And and one of the reasons this orchestra also became known as a laid-back orchestra, meaning they kind of play things real relaxed, but still in the beat, but real relaxed. That was for the dancers. So, and we still do that. And Mr. Basie, he just understood, and that era, the late 30s and early 40s during the swing era when it first really began. And even before that, in the 20s, when Louis Armstrong and King Oliver's bands were playing, people were dancing to it. So we still try to make sure we keep that dance element, and we'll never, ever abandon it. And to me, I don't care what kind of jazz you were playing, whether it's, a septet, which is really cerebral, and you're really working on the harmony and trying to get all these intricate things. If people can't dance to it, what's the point?
Yes.
You know what I mean? If
the dancers appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. So we encourage the dancers, if there's room there when we come to play, absolutely. We encourage that.
Wonderful. Well, and it's about the call and response, right? Which goes all the way back in music and dance tradition. And that call and response between audience and artist and musician and between jazz musicians on the stage, right? Can you speak a little to an improvising and calling response? Can you speak to that within your style?
Yeah, well, the call and response thing with the musicians on the stage is that we basically just have conversations, and if we're playing for a dance, the dances affect how we play. If we're playing just a regular concert and people are kind of sitting still, then it's more on us to kind of really keep that mood going. But we really like to play for people. And having a conversation amongst musicians is one of the most incredible things you ever can imagine. How serious, if you really understand what we're doing, how somebody in the saxophone, for example, there's certain songs where we play a saxophonist, he may solo first. He may be the first one to solo. And then I could be next. And right after him, before I start playing, whatever he plays his last 2 or 3 notes, I can take those 2 or 3 notes and that can be the start of my solo. So we keep this thread going. And sometimes when I'm done, then it might go to the pianist. He may take my last 2 or 3 notes and we'll just keep it going. And that's a very unique thing to be able to hear and to be able to do in real time. That's in real time. That's not rehearsed. It's not, planned out. We don't know what's going to happen. But when it does happen and it really works well, that's one of the greatest feelings in the world. It really is.
It's amazing. Yeah. And that was also iconic to that era of when he was creating, right? So like we had mentioned, it was during a depression. It was during a time when there were a war and then 2 wars going on. And so it was about lifting up people in the time that they didn't have to be at work or they weren't, they were in their homes or in their their spaces, the venues. Do you think that's shifted at all? Do you think I might nudge it up doing, right? We're doing that for communities. How do you feel that may lift up people during a pandemic?
Oh, absolutely. People can't wait for live music.
Yeah.
People cannot wait for live music, especially a big band, like the way the music we play. So obviously, I mean, I've been getting emails and messages on Facebook, people just chomping at the bit. When you guys touring again, we can't wait to come here. We need to get out of this funk we've been inside of the house for a year and a half and all of that. So finally, things are beginning to happen. And as we've been saying among a bunch of my musician friends, this is like a new renaissance. It's starting to be more work for musicians because people realize what they lost this last year and a half. I mean, sometimes people can be at home and they'll see advertised on their local stations or newspaper or great artists playing live that weekend. And they used to have a kind of a nonchalant attitude. Oh, I'll see them when they come through town again. But now, no. People, okay, we're going to that. We're going to go to this. We're going to go to that, because they realize that the arts really invigorate the human spirit. And it's all about connecting all of us. We're all connected here, which is why when we travel around the world, we get the same response. Whether we're in Japan or whether we're in Australia, the audiences react the same to our music, which is they can't get enough of it. And so when the shows are over, we meet the people, and I have so many friends around the world. I mean, even a few of the guys in the orchestra married people that they met in Japan. I mean, so this music really does that. It helps you to see the common humanity in all of us and the positive energy that Mr. Basie figured out how to generate on every song that we play. Not just one or two. Every single song that we play is full of positive energy. The people just have to relax and just let it wash over them, for lack of a better term. And by the time they leave our concert, they should feel better than they did when they first got there. That's the goal.
Guaranteed. Yes. So all of you listening, come on out next week. Come.
Absolutely right.
Absolutely. Yeah, wonderful. Also, we were talking about the list, right, that you're working with on your upcoming, hopefully, CD, as well as others that are joining you. Miss Carmen, do you want to speak a little to that element of our performance?
Carmen is incredible. She joined the orchestra in 1983. And she was the last vocalist that Mr. Basie hired before he passed away. And so she has a heck of a solo career. She stays busy all the time, but whenever we can get her to tour with us, she definitely comes and makes world tours with us. And it's just a pleasure to hear someone and work with someone who's such a true master of what she does. And she's straight out of the Ella Fitzgerald, Sarah Vaughan, Carmen McRae, Billie Holiday tradition. She's in that line of them. She is part of what they left, And so anybody singing today knows that, especially if they're singing jazz. Everybody knows who Carmen is. And to stand in front of an orchestra like the Basie Orchestra with 17, 18 musicians in it and still be able to be heard and project and all of that without having to over-sing, that's an art in and of itself. So you guys will love her. She sings the blues with the best of them. She sings beautiful ballads with the best of them. Straight ahead swing tunes with the best of them. And she's just a wonderful personality. You guys are going to love her.
Excited. I know. We're so excited. Wonderful. And in terms of staying connected, this is your first show back, I'm hearing, after the pandemic. How have you all stayed connected and maybe kept your chops?
I mean, I teach at Florida State, and all of us, I think half of us have teaching jobs and things like that. So we've been able to stay in touch and continue to do what we do as musicians in general, just getting better as musicians. And I've been able to do, all of us have been able to do like Zoom events and things like that and lectures and stuff. So we've all been pretty busy, and it's been pretty good, but we're ready to get back to work, And but for me, believe it or not, I was telling somebody this last night, it's hard to believe it's been 14 months since we played last. It's hard. That's the first time that's ever happened since I've been in the orchestra, or the orchestra's history actually, had been active that long. But the time seemed to kind of really go quickly for me, for whatever reason. I don't know why it seems like that. I'm trying to remember what it was like right a year ago in the pandemic. I can't even really hardly remember that now. It's like I'm just, okay, now I'm ready to go back to work again. Like this little blip in time. And I learned how to cook a lot more different types of foods, I'll tell you that.
Oh,
and
fantastic. Yeah.
I became a chef.
Any favorites?
Oh, my God. My favorites have been rigatoni pasta with spicy Italian sausage. I make my own sauce.
Okay.
Absolutely.
We might need to pull you into the kitchen when you.
So yeah, I figured out how to do a few things, and but we're
Wonderful.
all ready to get back to work, and I just can't wait to see all the guys and get back to work.
Awesome. Well, we can't wait to see you.
Yeah.
On that note, thank you so very much.
Thank you.
For joining us. We are thrilled. We're about a week out. So for all of you joining us, come on out to the Gouge Center, the amphitheater at the City of Auburn Lawn and Porch, our outdoor space where we are physically distanced, we're safe, we're ready to celebrate with the incredible live music of the legendary Count Basie Orchestra with director Scotty Barnhart. So tickets are still available. The information is below us right here on the screen. Visit that link, aub.ie//Basie. Feel free to call our box office. Come on out and witness the magic this next week. So we'll see you very soon.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
All the very best.
Thank you very much. See you next week.
See you next week.